I think Ev's core values, when I think of core values, the thing that comes to mind topmost is discipline. He's very disciplined as a person, very disciplined in his thinking, very focused in his thinking, focused in his writing, and all this comes from a certain kind of discipline. And I think it's a hallmark of a good scholar to be able to, because when you think about it, here's someone who picked up an idea 45 years back and is still excited about it.
The author of 32 books and more than 500 articles, Ev was best known for his 1962 book, Diffusion of Innovations. Now in its 5th edition, Diffusion of Innovations has been translated into 15 languages and is the second most cited book in the social sciences.
What got me interested in the diffusion of innovations was mainly the fact that my father was not a very progressive farmer. My uncle, who farmed a larger farm next door, Uncle Eddie, was the first to have a corn picker, was the first to have this and that. And 5 years later, we would be following in his footsteps. So that was the beginnings of my interest in why some farmers adopted ideas before others. I could see that it wasn't economic factors. These innovations made money, quite a lot of money, for everybody who adopted them. And so why would farmers be making uneconomic decisions? That was puzzling. I was an undergraduate in agriculture. Then I was in the Air Force, where I learned to do social science research. And so when I came back from the Air Force, I wanted to learn more about this puzzling question. My PhD dissertation was a study of the diffusion of innovations in one Iowa community, Collins, Iowa, 150 farmers. And of course, I found the same thing there as in my home community. Some farmers were very innovative, others weren't. So my thesis concluded that one of the main reasons is who talked to whom. If a farmer talked to another farmer about an innovation, and if it worked for the first farmer, then the other farmer was much more likely to adopt. So it was a social process. It wasn't an economic process. And that was my dissertation. And then with a lot of rewriting of the review of literature, it became my first book, this 1962 book. And it was heavily, that book, oriented to agricultural diffusion, because most research had been done on farmers, including by me, but by others too. And, but I argue that this was a general model, that it would apply to school teachers or medical doctors or people in any field. And event sense, research sense, has largely proven that that's true.
A good deal of the work of, for instance, what was the Stop AIDS program, revolved around Ev's diffusion of innovations theory. It involved the use of opinion leaders, for instance, amongst these what are often termed as unique population groups, because here's a very diverse city. There were, I think, several hundred programs on HIV/AIDS that were operating in San Francisco, some very small, but they were very highly targeted. So you can imagine gay Filipino men who were bisexual and who worked in rice bars in the city of San Francisco. That's a small population. But opinion leaders were used for that small population to create dialogue and discussion amongst these groups. And we see the value of influence coming in terms of diffusing new ideas about prevention, new ideas about care, new ideas about support, and of course later new ideas about treatment. So the Stop AIDS program, I'd say, in San Francisco was a very direct, clear application of Ev's diffusion of innovations theory.
Ev's life and career was an international and intercultural journey. His was a rich and varied life. An academic for almost 50 years, he traveled the world and became one of the most influential scholars in the communication field.
So he, perhaps more than anyone else in the communication field during the last 50 years, has worked across fields and across disciplines. So between sociology and communication, and with psychologists and with folks in public health, international development, a lot of people in education, people in engineering. He has had, not just in terms of research relationships and working on projects together, but his scholarship has resulted, of course, in this paradigm. Perhaps he will be remembered as being very central in the institutionalization of the communication field, perhaps. Clearly he's played a very strong role in that field, in our field, but the fact is, I think, he has been between fields and between disciplines, and that's where he's wanted to be, because that's where he's seen the greatest value in terms of social problems and social solutions to problems.
I'd like to be remembered not just for my academic accomplishments, although I'm happy with those, but as being someone who left the world a little better than when I came into it. And the fact that my main theory, diffusion, was a means of bringing about change. That's very important to me. The fact that my lifetime put me in a position to help other people. And now that I'm ill and retired, I see just how strong that is. So I'd say my greatest satisfaction is in the relationships that I developed with people and how they've lasted over the years.